Episode 224, the Dylan Moore average episode. That's right, folks. He still plays Major League Baseball. Second base position isn't critical unless you like winning. Tonight, we're talking second base dynasty rankings. It's time for Dingers.
This is Dingers, way more than fantasy baseball. We keep it real when we talk and knock it straight out the park. Let's see the stats, what's the average draft position? What kind of plays you making? Check the wins above replacement, check the lineups and the points. This I gotta see, what's your path to victory? Are they aiming for a dynasty? Get points going head to head, please don't do me no favors. We're always watching waivers, ain't no minor league, this is major, yeah. Dingers, let's go.
Welcome to Dingers, the only fantasy baseball podcast for smart people. It's not just Nick Madrigal that wins you championships. That's why week in and weekend we're delivering tips and strategies to help you live that straight up OG lifestyle. Joined, as always, by president of the Nick Madrigal fan club, Robbie Baseball. What's happening, Robbie?
Funny that you would lead with Madrigal as I'm just putting the tweet out there. Guesses on where I have ranked Madrigal this season. Because you can find us at Dingers Pod. We actually had a pretty decent number of people who hopped on a little bit of this last night for us, Ty. We were just about hitting the 100 mark, which is cool. Not that you have to exclusively find us on Twitter. We've got a very hard to find YouTube channel that has the best thumb marks in the game as far as thumbnails.
Yeah, we really got to find and learn how to use that share button. We got to get in there and press share.
I will give credit to Michael Govier, who's got 90 different things that he does, but one of them that I really enjoy is the Cinema 9 podcast, and they've had some recent successes with YouTube, and they have good views. And one of the movies, which is Cinema 9, they review movies and say, does it still hold up? Is it still worth watching, kind of thing. The most recent one, Ty, that they did last night, but I haven't got to listen to it yet, is for the movie Waiting. Are you familiar with that movie?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. Classic.
Fun fact, not one, 2 copies, DVDs, right here.
Just in case you wear one out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Case. But anyway, so they know what they're doing. So I'll have to talk to him about that maybe. But otherwise, how are you doing? I know you said you were trying to make sure the kids were happy and sleeping tonight so that your wife would not bother you. But
yeah, and I mean, maybe they need the bourbon more than we do, but it's it's bedtime. Our kids actually sleep beautifully, but our youngest seems to be having a little bit of a fight this evening. So I'm probably going to pay for that at some point, but that's just how the cookie crumbles. And I'm sure there's some dads out there listening, nodding their head, going, "Yep, that's it. That's exactly how that plays out." We're all in it together, guys. That's just the way it is. To any moms listening, we're right. So sorry.
Yikes!
Yeah, somebody soundbite that one. Yeah,
yeah.
But anyway, we're talking second baseman tonight, and we're gonna get into that. But before we do, let's do what we do best.
A long time ago, someone decided to put stuff in glass bottles. In some of these bottles, they put juice or milk, and that was stupid. Today, only alcohol and a few other products remain in the containers from the gods. It's time for beers and bourbon, because good advice only comes in a bottle.
Oh, is that another Paps you got over there?
No. Hold on, wait for it.
Oh, Crown Float. We're back.
Yeah, that's right, baby. We're back.
I've got this. I do really like this one. I never see anybody do the "look what I bought" social media post with the Elijah Craig small batch that you can get generically at the LCBO here in Ontario. But
they do have a commercial.
It's a good little bourbon though.
Yeah, LCBO has like
just kind of off the rack a little bit.
There's like one of those 5-second commercials that's Elijah Craig related, and then there's that like Angels and Demons one as well.
No, Angels Envy.
You get the idea. There's wings on it. I've seen that too. So those are a few of the ones that I know. Man, I busted the absolute crap out of my thumb doing some construction stuff, and
So
I could barely.
smashing stuff.
I was putting up a set of stairs. You can't see anything. It's a bandage, but I was putting up a set of spiral stairs that I don't know, like 4 years ago we were originally looking for and finally found a set a month ago. So I put them up the other day, and then I was just doing all of the drywall up and around it to fix all of my, hack job of structural support systems. And any structural engineer would not want to see what I did. But anyway, it's all good. It'll never cave in. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, I was just screwing structural screws. So it's like a star bit, very sharp. Anyway, it slid out and went in, but it hit my thumbnail and then went right beside onto the skin, and it dug in. And I was using an impact gun, so it zips, and it effing hurt. Oh man. So last night it was throbbing, and like I was already drinking. So once I added in some NyQuil and some Advil, I was able to sleep. And I woke up 10:30 this morning. I haven't slept that late in a long time. And anyway, so it's starting to pulse again. So it's a good thing we're drinking, because I need it.
Yeah, it's the same feeling you have when Nick Madrigal gets sent to the bench.
Oh my God. Oh, I'm so sad about that. Well, before we do that, Ty, let's fire off, and let's not get too crazy with this because it's far less exciting, but these are all things for us Dynasty guys out here. The hot news. I did fill in the hot news. I don't know if you saw that, but I do have it filled in for us. Okay. So Evan Longoria signed in Arizona for a year. So interesting. Doesn't really disrupt a whole lot. If he's healthy, he could be, a minor value add for you this year.
And the ball flies out of there. So, I mean, could be a little power jump for Longoria that we haven't seen in a few years too.
Hopefully. Yeah. Hopefully we get good things out of it. Marwin Gonzalez has gone to the NPB. That's Japan. Dynasty sleeper alert. Former Cubs catcher, first base, possible DH guy for this year. PJ Higgins DFA'd. Ouch. That's going to hurt some people who thought they found a gem last year. And we talked about him a little bit on the catcher episode, said we weren't too sure exactly what was going to happen with him, but I didn't think this was going to happen. So we knew that they still had two catchers, and he was kind of the third guy, but trying to get him off the 40-man. Gene Segura has signed in Miami. That's exciting. I just read today that they're talking that he'll be their third baseman. So who was it? It wasn't Garrett Cooper. Who's their third baseman? It was an often Brett Anderson. Anderson, is that right?
Brian Anderson, yeah.
I felt like I was just doing the Moneyball thing where he's like, "What's the name of the player? The player you want?"
Well, it's kind of interesting, right? And I was thinking this the other day when this signing happened. Like, this is a really interesting. Like, we know Chisholm had some, issues in terms of the clubhouse there in Miami, right? He obviously set somebody off, whether that was Mattingly or whether it was all the players on the team. Like, we don't have that full story, at least as far as I'm aware.
All the players on the team.
Yeah, like, you know what I mean? Like, who knows? But the point I was trying to get to is that this is interesting because it gives them enough depth to have a conversation about whether Jazz is a trade piece.
Oh, right? Don't you do that tonight.
I'm just saying.
You not on the second base episode. Not tonight. Okay. Well,
but hear me out, because I think it'll make you happy as somebody that is rooting a little bit for Jazz. White Sox would be a really interesting fit for Jazz Chisholm. Can you imagine him and Anderson up the middle, loudest middle infield in the history of baseball?
If there's a team off the top of my head that I think could deal, if you want to call him a potential issue, which let's wait till we get to him, that would be one heck of a spot to land. Because
I just wanted to mention it because I agree with you. I thought it was the perfect fit.
Yeah, and Miami always in transition, so we got to see. We'll have to do some depth episodes on some of these interesting teams that just have players. They got prospects that should be ready. We don't always have to cover the Dodgers, right? There's other teams that have a lot more fantasy relevant things that can happen. Value goes up and down within those players. Anyway, Miami's an interesting case. Speaking of value going up, Hyun-Jin Ryu could be a steal in the summer. Ty, what do you think? Would this be someone you would look to target? He apparently, through a translator, has said he's looking like he'll be ready for July, which is interesting to say. Headed into 2023, he'll be ready at the end of 6 months from now.
One of the things that I read a long time ago in terms of Tommy John, and I've never had Tommy John, so I've like zero proof on this outside of I read this once upon a time. I feel like it might have been like Dirk Hayhurst's book. Like I forget exactly where it was, but it talked about how coming back from Tommy John, because the muscle that they install is so tight that
Mhm.
it's the pain that stops you from coming back. So the
Yes.
tougher you are, the faster you are that you come back. Now, with Ryu, he's square, so he's a different kind of body shape than most guys. So maybe there's less like range of motion required to be Hinjin Ryu, and kind
Yeah.
of allows him to come back faster. But yeah, I mean, he doesn't throw hard enough for it to hurt that much either. So like when you combine all these things, it doesn't really shock me that it's potential. The one thing I'm concerned with, and the reason I probably won't play the risk card, maybe a trade asset, maybe if he comes back in July. Uh,
Mhm.
but the only reason I stay away is generally coming back from Tommy John. It's touch and feel that is the last thing to come back, and that's Ryu's bread and butter. That is his calling card. So I don't know that I'm willing to run into that fire. Now,
Okay.
if he's on a longer term deal and I can get him for basically free to give somebody an asset for a playoff run, that I would maybe be interested in. But that's about it.
Yeah, I was thinking of your contracts leagues where someone has him and he's costing, 10% of the salary because at the time that he was acquired, he was a hot commodity and now he's, essentially hurting that roster this offseason. So if your roster was designed in a certain way, you could afford to have him come in and then throw him on your IR as soon as you're able to do that. That would be an interesting one. Anyway, something certainly to monitor because if he's going to come back, there's no way Toronto's not going to push him because they're going to try to get every last bit of baseball out of him. I'm just going to do every Moneyball reference I can possibly do. So that's the second one. Anyway, a couple of pieces of Atlanta news. We talked a little bit about Lewin Diaz coming and going from Atlanta. Well, he's DFA'd. We're going to see what's happened. At this moment in time, nothing has happened. But Eli White has come over from Texas, as has the relief pitcher Lucas Lutage. I think that's right.
Lukey,
Lugie, thank you.
like
Pittsburgh.
Lukey. Yeah.
Pittsburgh has DFA'd former starter relief pitcher Bryce Wilson. Never was really able to get it clicking together. He's just been super depth piece. We did mention on the last pod, but we'll just say it for real in hot news now. Corey Kluberg, the Klubot, has signed in the AL East with the Red Sox this time, making that rotation a little more cloudy, but also still going with our 2019 all-team fantasy lineup that the Red Sox are building for real. Possible next guy they might add because he's been DFA'd by San Francisco is Tommy La Stella. That I think is a good thing because there's a lot of youth in San Francisco and some at bats that can get freed up by him departing.
Yeah, Texas brought in Nathan Eovaldi to kind of shore up that rotation. Like that rotation has gone from the worst in baseball to pretty good, right? Not
Yeah.
great, not fully elite yet, but good enough. And if that offense is what we think it can be, and they have a couple follow-up seasons from Leote, if Bubba Thompson keeps being the fastest guy ever,
Oh man,
and
yeah.
we see
He could be such an asset to that team. Like Bubba
well,
Thompson, even if he's not a starter every day, he could
mhm.
come in like, 4 out of 5 days and end up with, 3 stolen bases and scoring runs for the Rangers when they need it, which is really going to help out when Spencer Howard emerges as the SP2. And Ty's
Yeah, like
shaking his head. He agrees.
there's an absolute. I was just trying to think of how to do this, like combining the plot lines from Forrest Gump with Forrest and Bubba, right? Like I don't know how you do that, right? Like
Mhm.
maybe if he steals the first base, you say shrimp and potatoes, and then he steals the second base, it's shrimp and beans, or what? Like I don't know the
Yeah.
right way to combine all of it. Obviously, I just
Shrimp
felt like
salad,
running
shrimp,
is
shrimp
yeah,
and
like
grits, shrimp.
but
We can work on it.
yeah, exactly. But either way, this rotation got better. And I mean, Seattle isn't a lock to be 2 in this division anymore. I mean, as much as they're probably still the better team, they're certainly just not a lock. And I
Yeah.
mean, Houston's no longer a lock to be 1 either, even though they're probably still the hands down favorite. So just that interesting, acquisition for them. KC finally DFA'd Ryan O'Hearn. They stopped pretending he was eventually going to get good. And they're like, oh, by the way, we got these 2 other guys that are way better. And we're going to give them some at bats. Rich Hill's a Pirate. We talked about a little bit on the last episode, but Robbie still owns him in every single league that he's in, and so I've never had Rich Hill for that reason. But
he was really useful at times in every season I've had him. The problem is that I haven't been able to have it all come together. Now, he's also always been a very easy to acquire guy, because anyone who has him in your dynasty league will absolutely make a trade for some type of pitching prospect that has the potential to come up in the next 18 months. So you can get him for the Bryce Wilson type guy. You don't have to go ahead with the Daniel Espinos of the world. You can go and get yourself a Rich Hill and just get some depth to your lineup. And we know he's starting. He is 100% starting for the Pirates.
I would love to see him close, because I just think it could be fascinating with the big, huge Bender coming in.
If he just wants to keep pitching, right? Like, that would be cool.
It would be really tough, though. End of game, you just faced 2 flamethrowers, and then Rich Hill comes rolling out with the lefty loop. Like, I'm here for that. Ottavino, speaking of lefty loop from the right side, Ottavino back to the Mets with his little frisbee thing that he does. I mean, this is a good fit. He didn't have a great season last year. It's a good fit for the Mets. Adds the depth. They're ready to do some things this year. Polanco also headed to Japan. Gregory, former Pirate, once promising, massive human being playing right field, now is going to be a giant amongst men in Japan. He's going to do some things over there. We'll see what happens there. Could be one we might see bounce back late in the career, Robbie. That is the one thing I'll say there. If he picks up some contact skills while he's over there, the power was never really the issue with Polanco. Jackson Stevens on an MLB deal. Robbie, you got anything on this one in Atlanta?
Yeah, I had put the asterisk because I wanted to make sure I knew exactly what Atlanta was signing up for here, because he's been with them. He was with them last year. And I don't know if it was like a minor league deal. He got called up. So then this year he is on a major league deal because he spent a lot of time, 29 games that he was 39 games, sorry, that he was in last year, 53 and 2/3 innings. This is, I would argue, your run of the mill type guy here. What did he have for strikeouts here? He had 47 in the 53 and 2/3 innings with nothing too special, 1.34 whip. Just a guy, and not a big save hold threat here, but somebody just I thought to mention, because there's another relief pitcher that I kind of liked who's a few guys down. I'm going to skip right to him in Adam Kolarek with the Dodgers, who had brief pockets of success before he was with, I think, Tampa Bay, and then ended up going to Oakland and just sucked. And then it was bad. I can't remember if he went to Colorado or not. Anyway, it doesn't matter. He's with the Dodgers now, which is where he was beforehand, I think, as a prospect. So this could be a good thing for him. A couple other minor things happened. San Diego signed pitcher Aaron Brooks as some depth for them. The Angels signed former prospect who I think must have aged out as a minor leaguer, Kevin Padlo, formerly with Tampa Bay. And then an interesting one, a couple years ago, this player, Evan Phillips, was being looked at as a, major league player, possibly a decent fantasy asset in deeper leagues, and then fell off. I think is it Evan Phillips? Yeah. That's what happens when you have a guy with 2 first names. So Evan Phillips.
Evan Phillips. I'm going to look it up.
Okay.
This guy's so relevant to me, I can't remember.
Well, the thing was, he had a decent 2020, I think.
Okay, time out. Yeah. When I punched Evan Phil, like PH, the 2 options that pop up in Baseball Reference, Evan Phillips and Phillip Evans. So now I'm going to go with Evan Phillips because it seems the more obvious.
So he was with the Pirates. That's how he came in.
Nope, and then that's the pitcher. I should have known that one.
What?
Because Evan Phillips had a very reasonable season last year with a 1.14 ERA. Should have known that one. I'm kicking myself for not knowing that one.
Hold on.
Was quite good. So Phillip Evans.
Phillip Evans is with the Dodgers.
No, other way around.
Evan Phillips is with the Dodgers.
Evan Phillips is with the Dodgers. He's the reliever. Phillip Evans is the third base guy that you're referring to that had a brief, 3 weeks of success at the end of, or had some success at the end of 2020, and then an initial hot start in 2021, and then he turned back into a pumpkin.
Yeah. I'm just verifying, though. He's the one who I'm talking about here. That's
Correct.
who I'm.
Phillip Evans. Agreed. You had it right the first time.
Oh, so you messed me up. Anyway, Phillip Evans going to Arizona. Back to my original point was just that it's getting a little crowded in Arizona now with Longoria there, Phillips there, Emmanuel Rodriguez, or sorry, what is it? Evan? No. Oh my
Manuel
gosh.
Rivera.
Emmanuel, I'm so messed up with the names. So
Yeah.
we'll just have to move on and we'll circle back to that. But it's getting a little crowded there in Arizona. The Cubs, like we talked about this before, had signed Drew Smyly. I just want to make sure we actually said it. The Phillies have officially signed Craig Kimbrell, 1-year deal. This one, Ty, after doing our first base one, both made me laugh and cry. The Cubs have claimed Anthony Kay, and they DFA'd Alfonso Rivas.
Yep.
And I was like, it looks like he's going to get time. Why wouldn't he? Blah, blah, blah. Well, the Cubs have now, well, it looks like maybe the Cubs are either gearing up to pick up a first baseman, which we talked about in the first base episode, that there's still three out there at that moment. Or Matt Mervis is the guy. And I can't imagine Matt Mervis is honestly going to be the guy walking in. But
don't hassle the Haas.
Oh, this was the other Arizona guy, Diego Castillo, again from Pittsburgh. DFA'd. He's there now. And then Arizona's corresponding move was DFAing former prospect Taylor Widener. Just notable so that you make sure you're not holding on to Widener, because if he's looking to be taken off this 40-man of Arizona, he's not going to be coveted by 29 other teams. So we did talk about Zach Logue on the last one, that he's now in Detroit. Ty, I'm going to give you the last two. I know you're going to be excited.
Yeah, Michael Conforto to San Francisco is, like, from a fantasy perspective, the worst thing that probably could have happened to him. Mm-hmm. Left-handed power, going to die. Just ask Brandon Belt, who probably could have had double the number of home runs he had in San Francisco, somewhere else. So this is really bad news to Conforto owners out there. I'm really happy no one accepted any of my trades this offseason. So thank you for everyone declining my very reasonable offers at this point. So that's that. Correa's still not a Met. Like, we're going on an extended period of time here.
Yeah, the jokes that he's going to end up signing with Oakland might come to fruition here. This could happen. The wait it out and then sign a 10-year, $16 million deal with the A's. That could happen.
I saw this. Somebody posted this the other day. Like, what is this injury? Right? Like, what is the thing?
It's something to do with a metal plate that he has in his leg. This is like 100%. I'm trying to go off memory from what I read, that the plate may have potentially shifted. And the issue with that is that it could mean that, he could be on the cusp of either needing surgery to correct it, or that something catastrophic could happen. So I understand that, but how in the heck you get to the point where that's something that a scrub like me can go and find on the internet, and it hasn't already been addressed at the player level and the agent level and the team level, is crazy. If that is the case, that there's an issue where, the way in which he runs, and he's got this plate from breaking whatever the hell it was that he broke, there's a plate in there that could be the issue.
Ooh.
So
yeah, that's no good.
Right.
Yeah.
So also no good is about, 45 of the second basemen that we're going to be talking about tonight. We've ranked 65, and it's time to transition to that. So we'll do what we did last time, Ty, because I think that works well. Anybody outside the top 50 that you want to mention? I can give you first go at it. I've taken it last time.
Thanks. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's really only one guy of note. Tamir Johnson in Pittsburgh, an early pick of the Pirates, is still just a ways away, right? But the expectation is there's still some upside there. A couple guys that did fall outside, Robbie, that I think are closer, are notable, like Tyler Wade, Tony Kemp, John Birdie, Rougned Odor, all could provide fantasy value in your deeper leagues, right? Like, not a huge amount, like nobody that you want to build your team around by any means.
Right.
But all four of those guys could be depth pieces. There's a couple other guys that are kind of going off slowly into the sunset. Jonathan VR might be going faster than some of the other guys. Jonathan Scope is the only other guy that's outside of that I think is interesting. And then, Robbie, I know you got one you want to cover here.
Yeah. So Tamar Johnson was just drafted, and we do a 5-year dynasty ranking. So it's 5-year MLB production. And we do account for things like, you want to bake in that injury risk, but also that prospect pedigree and or hype. So Tamar Johnson's just going to be hype because he's 18. The odds of him being a contributor within the next 5 major league seasons is very slim. Pittsburgh's not rushing players at this point in time. But someone who's in front of him on the depth chart is Rodolfo Castro, who I want to make sure I pull this up properly, who came into the bigs in 2021. He's only got 339 major league at bats, but he's not the worst. He's not the best, but he's not the worst. He fits the mold of he'll fill in for now. Had a little bit of power last year, 11 home runs in 250 at bats. So that's okay. OBP is not great. It was just sub 300. But the OPS left me kind of intrigued as he had a 725 and muted time on a terrible team. So someone to look at long term, no. Someone to look at as maybe a player that can improve and could help you. Sure. Yeah. And not an expensive guy. And that's really it outside the top 50. Like Jonathan Schopp is at 51, who I think you did mention. And like, we need to know exactly what we're getting out of him. The up and down seasons that he's been providing us with are very hard for dynasty guys to bank on. So,
agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Diving right into the top 50, because I mean, there's not a whole lot better ahead here in the next little section here, but Kevin Newman is a guy that's going to get some time here, especially early on with the Reds coming over from the Pirates. We know that Cincinnati has some guys coming, right? So it's just a matter of when they get there. It's going to impact Newman's value. And I mean, if Newman can't steal playing time in Pittsburgh or in Cincinnati, like, that is the beginning of the end. I'm sorry, from a fantasy value perspective. Ahead of him, Tyler Black, former reasonable expectation prospect. I think he's slowly starting to fizzle just a little bit on that front, Robbie. But I mean, there's still some upside potentially here. Do you have anything on Black you want to mention?
Yeah, Black is on the MLB.com's list of top 10, which is why I wanted to just make sure we included a little mention on him. He came in, when was he drafted here? I'm just trying to make sure. He was drafted, also Canadian, note the Canadian factor, 33rd overall in 2021. So he's still young enough in his pro career that we could see some good things. And he batted all right last year. Ty was, a 281 average at high A, and he did go to the fall league. Fall league, he was fine, nothing crazy. But we're not seeing a lot of power out of him. He's not looking like a huge stolen base guy. So we're gonna have to see what we can reasonably get. And the fact that he's a 22-year-old in a crowded Milwaukee system's not ideal.
And that's what I was getting at. He had 13 home runs in his last year of college, and really he hasn't hit that since. So like that's the concern for me from a fantasy perspective. It doesn't mean, like we talk about this all the time, like doesn't mean these guys can't play at the major league level. They can't be really good defensively to balance off that risk, right? Like we mentioned Luis Ariz yesterday or last episode. And it's one of those ones that we want to highlight here for Black, because I feel like he fits the upside of that conversation. Next on the list, Santiago Espinal in Toronto. This is a guy that I think a lot of people are going to be surprised we have this far back, Robbie. I feel like he's going to be a lot higher on a lot of other lists.
Yes,
but I think we're both Jays fans. We both know what Espinal is. He had some big moments last year, right? He had some good stretches of baseball. He did have some clutch at bats. I'll give him that. But
yeah, first half he was a beast, right? First half he was a beast. He really helped the Jays out. I just wanted to clarify. I'm a Mariners fan. I've officially made that transition.
I'm still not gonna let that die slowly.
I identify as a Mariners fan.
Okay. So just to flag the rest of it, the second half OPS last year was 643, right? And even then the first half OPS still just 711. So nothing
empty average. That's what we were saying a year ago.
Yep.
Right.
And I just think the Jays have better options, right? For me, between Witt and Biggio, I think Espinal's the odd man out. Like this is a potential minor league stop this season, or actually he might be out of option. So this could be a DFA or trade option here before the season starts. So still maybe a little roster juggling for the Jays ahead here.
Something funny, maybe not funny, but something to note about Espinal could be the trajectory very much like Rowdy Tellez, where he came in last year, or he came in on 1 year, performed, ended up as an all-star, and then wasn't in the future plan for the Jays, but was supposed to be a stopgap, and then gets pushed out. So that could be something where the Jays do that like they did with Rowdy. Just, dynasty owners out there, beware. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So, I mean, next up on the list is, we're starting to get into the side of guys that used to be, and that's Cesar Hernandez. We've seen good season of Cesar Hernandez. He was 23 ranked 8x8 last season, so still very reasonable in terms of what you could get out of him. He's not signed yet, so he'll end up on one of Cleveland, Chicago, or Philly. Probably that seems to be the cycle, or maybe back to Washington. We'll see. But a guy that still can provide depth and certainly enough production to be a major leaguer. It's just a matter of we don't have a home yet, and it'll be interesting to see. Boston could be an interesting one. There's still a bit of a hole in that infield. That could be one that would fit the mold of what we get out of Hernandez. Ahead of him, we're going to Oakland, Robbie. So you're now a West Coast guy, so I'll let you take this one.
Oh, I was trying to color code the ones that you would do the red, I would do the blue. We would go 5-5. It's okay because I understand. Jonah Bride, who last year came up and didn't suck. And I'm trying to pull up the minor league numbers here just so I can give a bit of context to it here, because he is a 26-year-old who, oh my gosh, quit closing the minors, who last year played at A, AA, and AAA, then went up to the show. But between those three levels, he only had 146 at bats. Then he tacked on 162 MLB at bats. So not a lot of year for him. He faded, was very bad down the stretch, 204 average, but the OBP was 300. Not a power guy, not a stolen base guy. Absolutely the definition of just a guy and or a filler. So that's where he is, but he's young enough at 26 with Oakland that he could just get some at bats this year, because Oakland has so many different guys that are, in and around there. But in the minors, he combined to hit 342. So there's the potential that he could just bat the ball around, and Oakland's got a huge park. So we have to see it. There isn't enough of a track record here to say that this is what he is, but I just don't want anyone to count him out or think of him as only having had that little bit of time that was not successful and cast him aside. If you've got a roster spot and you just want to take a flyer, he's just a name to consider. So I'll try to do the next 5, Ty, and then that way cut into any of them that you've got some fun and exciting to say. So slapdick prospect Xavier Edwards, he's now with Miami. This is where he might actually come up and become a major league player.
One thing really quick that
immediately cut in.
Just love to see though is if on fan weekend he just goes slapdick prospect on the jersey. That just
especially if let's say they're in San Diego or wherever.
Tampa.
No, but wherever the pitcher that said who's the slapdick prospect. Remember the guy that went to San Diego? Snell. Thank you. If he could ever face him and just on the back of his jersey, it says, slapdick. Anyway, Xavier Edwards, we're going to have to see. We've talked about him before. He has produced. He's just changed teams a lot as a minor leaguer. So we'll have to see what happens in Miami. I hope it comes together for him. But he's coming in at 45 for us. Recently drafted Connor Norby, 22-year-old college bat, is in at 44. Again, we just need to see what's up with him in Baltimore's timeline. Shocking to me is the 43rd ranked Luis Rengifo, Ty. This guy is 25 years old. Last year, he was the 22nd ranked player in 8x8. And just recap for everybody, that's runs, RBIs, home runs, stolen base, and the average. Those are your regular 5. We also add in the OPS. We count the walks and we count the times they strike out to give some balance to the position overall, to help with points league guys, to help with OBP league guys. I could not believe he was ranked this high, but he absolutely fell into it bad. So I don't know that it's going to continue for him, but he's young enough that he's going to stick around. Hopefully he's going to stick around the Angels and still get at bats. I'm not sure what we're going to reasonably see from him moving forward. So I would put a higher ceiling on the next guy that we have up in Romy Gonzalez, 27-year-old White Sox. It looks by default like he could be the starting second baseman for the Sox this year. And like you talked about, the potential with a Chisholm trade somewhere that Chicago could be a landing spot. Sure. Cesar Hernandez could also end up back in Chicago and really hurt Romy Gonzalez's opportunity. But there's a bat here and it could play. And then 41 is Wilmer Flores, the 31-year-old. Again, I couldn't believe that this is where he ranked 10th for second baseman. I do want to say it was really hard and it took a long time to get the actual players who had focused the bulk of their starts at second base and then to rank them. Flores was not near the top 10 in second base eligible, but it was second base as the predominant position. That's where he finished. So there were shortstop and third base and guys who played first and second who were ranked higher, but Flores as number 10, it's something to note, right? Because if you are playing, sometimes you draft best ball, it only gives you one position eligibility. Doesn't matter what the player can do. This is one of those opportunities where a guy like Flores is like super secretive value. It's not going to last long term, and we're going to have to see. But in San Francisco, Gabe Kapler's playing him, and he's producing. So it's not the coolest little 5-man flex I just gave you there. But of that crew, I think Romy Gonzalez has the highest 5-year window from them.
Well, everybody keeps discounting Wilmer Flores, and he just keeps continuing to be valuable. So I think that's the one thing I'll flag there. It's a guy that everyone loves to not love, but then continues to bail people out in injury situations. So I don't know. It's an interesting one for me. A good debate that we'll see as things progress. Next up on the list here, Aaron Bracco is a guy that once had a little bit of promise. Often gets confused with another Cleveland Indians prospect or Guardians prospect, sorry. And it's one of those ones that I just don't know that is going to be the guy that is of any value. I think he's going to continue to fall back our ranks, Robbie. But I do think he's high enough in the minors that he could carry some value. The hit tool is just not good enough. It's that simple. And I think ultimately that's going to be the breakdown for him.
Yeah, his rank does seem a little high. It's more based, I think, on the fact that he should get an opportunity soon to prove himself. But there's so many middle infielders in Cleveland. So it's going to be tough. Like you've got just third base alone. You've got like Tyler Freeman. Oh my gosh, who's the other guy who came up last year? Oh my goodness. Doesn't matter. But there's 4 guys I was just going to say with Bracco here. And it's not going to be easy to prove himself.
Is the other guy you're thinking.
Thank you, Gabriel Arias. Yeah. And then they were forced over through to injury at third base, but they're not third basemen.
Yeah, and he had a decent 2019. 2020 obviously was the pause year, and then the last 2 seasons just haven't been great. So, a real lack of progression here for Bracco, and I think, kind of the beginning and the end of the upside here. So moving forward, Nicky Lopez is a defense first infielder, got a lot of time over the last 2 seasons in Kansas City. That's also going to come to an end here as they start to fill their infield with guys that aren't just a guy. Nicky Lopez is an elite defensive infielder, so he's always going to stick. It's just a matter of whether he's going to get enough at bats to drive huge value, and the answer is he won't. So Michael Massey is a guy that is going to be involved in that conversation. Robbie, we were talking about him before we started recording tonight, how he was one of the several players that made their debut as a result of vaccinations when they came up to Toronto. Got a little bit of an extended look, and is a guy that stands to potentially find his way into more playing time this season, right? I mean, he's going to have to bump Mondesi and Lopez, assuming neither of those guys get hurt, but a guy that could be in the mix here as we move into the season.
And potential that he's the type of guy who starts the season with the big league club and is on the bench and gets limited opportunities, but is there. He had 200 and something at bats last year. He started well and finished poorly. Again, a big, full, long season, and it can wear on you. But also the fact that, he did have that very rare opportunity where I think it was 10 Kansas City AAA players all came up and went to Toronto because of the vaccination status. And Massey was one of the strong cases that continued from that point. So I like him. I don't love him, but I like him, and certainly like the idea of him getting opportunity in the future.
Yeah, and next on the list here, Nick York is a guy that I think shocked everybody when he was drafted 17th overall by the Red Sox in 2020. He's on Baseball America at rank 30 this year, so he's heading into the season on several other lists in the top 100. This is a guy that everybody expects to hit. Problem is last year didn't do a whole lot of that.
Big step back for him.
Yeah, 337 at bats at high A. Keeping in mind that he's still young, right? Just 20. So he did move rather quickly. There should be an adjustment period to be expected. The power was still there. That's the one thing, Robbie, that I get excited about when it comes to hit first kind of guys like York. 11 home runs last year in a down year as a 20-year-old. That's a real positive move. Like we could see 30 as early as this year, right? That's what that says with a 232 average. He hit 325, 333, and 323 across. So he hit 325 across 2 levels the previous year with a 928 OPS. So like real fall. I don't expect that to be the norm, given his 19 year was so successful. Something to take a look at, and really an opportunity to buy. Right, this is the kind of guy that everybody was unwilling to even think about selling as little as a year ago, and now you're in a scenario where some people are really going to question whether he's going to bounce back. So, a guy that's went through a very similar experience, but much later in his career, Matt Carpenter, comes in at 36. This is a guy that found a complete resurgence last year, went on a historic run, it was arguably better than Judge for that stretch. And not arguably, he was. He was great.
Yeah.
He had the filthy mustache.
Oh my God.
He had the
I
whole
wish
city
I could grow
buying him
that.
free drinks. Yeah. It was a good mustache. Like, and I'm shocked that the Yankees didn't bring that back just for branding purposes. But it's it's a whole thing. He's a guy that could have reasonable production. I think this is a really interesting one though from a depth perspective for the Padres. Given Tatis is going to miss some games to start this year, this could be a third baseman, and you could see Machado slide to short for that first handful of games. Could be a really, really interesting scenario here for the Padres.
If they don't trade Kim, and we don't talk rumors, but there are apparent rumors that he could be available. Kim is the shortstop there, and I still feel that when Tatis comes back from cheating, he will go to the outfield, and that will be the easiest spot for the Padres to put his bat and his body. The fear, of course, is that he's going to either ride a motorcycle or do something in the outfield that hurts himself, maybe fall on some more needles, Ty, and then miss more time. So keeping him out of the infield could be a good thing.
Yeah, Tatis is going to the outfield. There's no arguments because you got Bogaerts at short. But what I'm saying is we could see some extra games with Bogaerts at first. We could see some Machado at shortstop, right? Because then you leave second base open for Carpenter, for Kim, for Cronenworth, right? There's a whole bunch of different things that can happen on this infield. And like Matt Carpenter makes all that happen because he can play 3 of the 4 positions, not shortstop. And they have 3 guys that can play shortstop. So 4 guys that can play shortstop. Sorry. So, they have an incredible amount of flexibility for a team that looks like they're just throwing money at stars. They actually have a pretty solid roster construction. So just something to think about.
Yeah. Next 5 up here. So at 35, we have recently drafted Jace Jung with Detroit at 22-year-old. We're going to have to see how he rises through the system. But if you are looking for somebody with some hype coming on this year, it's going to be Jace Jung. People are going to want to see good things from him. Next prospect up is Justin Focus with Texas, 24-year-old. He is a cusp guy that we could see getting some at bats this year, perhaps. I've got a fun one here, Ty. It is, I accidentally gave myself 6. That's okay. Charles LeBlanc with Miami, 26-year-old, who I'll circle back to. And then I've got Adam Frazier with Baltimore in at 31. We know what Frazier can do when he's, doing great things with average on crappy teams like he was with the Pirates, but then he wasn't able to put it together with San Diego down the stretch. He was fine, but not amazing with Seattle last year. He was the 15th ranked second baseman. So he's going to provide some value to Baltimore. And then we have Abraham Toro, his former teammate, who's now with Milwaukee. We don't know exactly what we're going to see from Toro or where he's going to play or how much, but the guy's 25, 26 playing this year. The opportunity's there. I wanted to circle back to Charles LeBlanc, 26-year-old with Miami.
Is that the Ferrari driver?
Charles LeBlanc? What?
Yeah, the Ferrari driver. Come on,
I don't think he's
cultured.
I don't think he's made enough to drive a Ferrari. Maybe he's rented one. But
no,
LeBlanc,
like the F1 driver is Charles LeBlanc.
Oh, is that real? Okay, sure.
That's why I said get cultured. That still stands.
I drive old trucks. Right. Anyway, so he has the opportunity, although the Gene Segura signing isn't great for him, to move around the diamond a little bit and just get opportunity. He's good, not great. The floor's not the highest, the ceiling's not the highest, but he could just kind of plug away and get time. So that's why, he is where he is at 33. And as we've said before, typically anybody ranked outside of the top 30 either is going to miss a couple years because they're out of baseball, like retired, or there are prospects still coming up and not contributing. So they could be on either end of dominance over, 2 of those 5 seasons, but we're not sure what's going to happen with the other 3. And that's why they're outside the 30. These next 30 dudes, we expect to have 4, in most cases, 5 years of solid MLB production.
Yeah, Foskey's the only guy I want to just touch on really quick from your group. It's just as a guy that I think could be very, very good. Obviously, roadblock right now in front of him. That Texas infield is very strong. So, just a guy I'm looking for a trade. Right? This is the guys I like to target, Robbie. I like to go get a Foskey before the trade happens, so that I can benefit from. I don't know if you saw the rumors today, but the Edward Cabrera for Brendan Rodgers rumors. Oh, baby.
Yeah.
That is exactly why I made a trade for Brendan Rodgers, because I just think a new change of scenery will add some of that good old-fashioned because we know Brendan Rodgers comes with that, and we want to see that back. It's been missing. So just something real to point out there. So we talked Charles Blanc, we talked F1. Vidal Bruján is a guy that's known for speed. So this is a guy that hasn't been known for a whole lot of other things so far in his major league career. But I think this is actually a big reason why the Rays ended up moving Choi. I think they want to give Bruján some time. I think they want it to be at second base because although Brandon Lau is an okay defender at second base, I think they're going to want to help himself from getting hurt, either play him at first base or give him a little bit of more time at the DH, because Harold Ramirez, we talked about in our previous episode, is a guy that got a ton of first base reps last year, not great defensively. So I think they'll want to move him off of the first base. Lau is a guy that could fill a little bit of time over there as well. So just something to note with Bruján. Eguy Rosario, one of the best first names going, is a San Diego prospect that is gaining a little bit of traction and hype and quickly moving up through the Padres farm system because there was nobody after the trade deadline. It was just it was like walking into a store the day after the sale ends. It's just nobody there. And Eguy is a guy that could, really drive some opportunity for himself this season, given that opportunity. 23 here, a guy that got very limited time last season, just a handful of bats in 5. But over a couple seasons in the minor leagues, last 22 home runs in 2022 last year at AAA, 876 OPS. That's a big jump up from 12 the previous year and then single digits in all his years before that. So a little bit of a late bloomer on the power side with some stolen base upside. So this is a guy that really
could
move
OBP
the needle.
Ty. Yep. He's also a pretty solid OBP guy, and that might transition well with San Diego.
Agreed. And this is a guy we'll probably see in the outfield, realistically. For the Padres, left field might be a spot we see him a little bit. Not that they're completely void of depth out there, but Juan Soto can only play one of those 3 outfield positions, and Tatis will play one of the other ones. Trent Grisham is not a lock for that other one. So, if you can find a scenario where you've got Tatis in center and you rotate out in left field in San Diego, that could be where we see Eguy coming in this season. Really a guy we're going to want to watch come the spring to see what he's doing. David Fletcher's a guy that I've liked to buy into a little bit this year, Robbie. That team in LA got a little bit better offensively this offseason. They added a little bit of depth between Renfroe and Drury. Fletcher's still going to be a contact first guy. There's still some opportunities for him to get time in the middle infield. Drury's, in my opinion, not going to steal those at bats. Not from Fletcher, maybe from Rengifo, but there's still a DH slot when it's Ohtani day, and there's still room for them to make a trade for a pitcher still. So lots of things that could happen in LA, and there's probably some posturing on the rumor market to try to get LA into that conversation, because Joe Adell to the Marlins would make a ton of sense as well. That could be a really interesting trade for some pitching depth as they move through that. So I like Fletcher, a guy that lost a huge amount of value last year, 41st ranked second baseman. There was some upside in the home stretch. I watched a couple of games against the Jays. he looked like the guy we saw the couple seasons before. So I expect a bounce back from him, as I do with this next guy, Kevin Biggio. I've talked about him the last couple seasons. There's still a ball player here, and it's one of those ones that you move the shift out of play here, and we're going to see a little bit more out of Biggio. So I think that's a foregone conclusion that we'll see better Biggio this season because of the shift. And with almost all lefties, you should see this. But I think Biggio really stands to gain a little bit of confidence. He gained some last year, and I think he'll pick up a little bit. And I think this is back to Espinal, one of the big reasons why he's expendable, because you no longer have a real need outside of the backup shortstop position for Espinal. So, if you can find another guy at some point this season to give Bo Bichette some breath, then you're going to see Espinal take a back seat somewhere. Nick Gonzalez is last guy in this group at 26, just 24, first round pick several years ago. I think he was a 2020 guy, Robbie. I'm not entirely sure.
I believe that's right.
And this is one that I flagged, Robbie, as a guy that I wasn't as high on. And really just some of the film that I watched in college when he was facing the elite starters in college, he was getting beat. He had some great at bats throughout his collegiate career, but just really couldn't find that consistency that we were really looking for. And now I've got his numbers up here, I think.
For 2022?
No, I'm trying to find his minor leagues, but Baseball Reference isn't giving it to me. So I just wanted to see what his last year was. Do you have it up in front of you?
I don't, because I'm ready on my guy. But okay, I was gonna say
I quickly pivoted to Savant here. They came through for me. So in 2022, the numbers were okay, right? We had 264 average, just 7 bombs, and I think that for me is one of the concerns here. Like, he had 18 in the previous year, which was getting him on track to what all the expectations were, but back to 7. A little bit limited at bats, didn't have the same stretch as he did the previous season, but the OPS is still 817. So we're not ready to give up here. But again, I'm worried about the upper velocities. That's what I thought I saw in the film. That's what I'm expecting to see as he goes higher in the minors here. And that's really what the data is starting to show. So we'll see if that's the way it plays out this season. But I'm watching his success against the higher velocity fastballs. That's the big red flag for me.
Yeah, he certainly isn't the top 10, count him in there, future second baseman that he was said to be out of the draft. So we hit number 25 and Gene Segura. And a big reason for that is the fact that he's got himself a contract for this year. He hasn't been dominant, but the opportunity in Miami is going to be great. And if he does move to third base, we'll change the location for next year's rankings. But in the meantime, he's slotting in at 25. Michael Busch is the 25-year-old who I am most excited about in this group of 5 here that I've got. And that's because last year he raked. He had 552 at bats, 32 home runs, 118 runs, 108 RBIs, a 274 average, and a 365 OBP. His OPS, 881. That's delightful. And he did that between AA and AAA, predominantly AAA. And he was good at that. And that's PCL. So there are like park adjusted factors and things like that. His average was down in the PCL. Power was up. So I just like Michael Busch as a good option here. Now we've got Colton Wong. It's free agent, but he's not a free agent. He is in Seattle, right? That's the Seattle.
Colton Wong is in Seattle. This is correct.
Yeah, so I just made that mistake there. He's in here at 23, steady Eddie, very much like Whit Merrifield, who did not play great with Toronto post-trade last year, but this is his dominant position last year was second, or sorry, not dominant. His most played position last year was second base between KC and Toronto. I think he's going to be part of that outfield quad that they've got this year. Ty's thinking he's going to be second baseman, but either way, I think he's a really good player. He did not play well post trade last year. Hopefully, he settles in for this year, and then really, and again, he was the 9th ranked second baseman last year.
Really quick though, just like in the last 10 games of the season, let me just do it here: 2, 3, 8, 9. 12, 15, 16 hits in the last 10 games. So, there was a trend back towards better playing. He did finish strong with the Jays, had a very reasonable September, and that's in October. So I'll just flag that the wit we wanted to see showed up at the end of the season. So that's why I'm saying he's the lock at second base, because I just believe he finally got over his vaccination and now he was good to go.
Oh no. I'm glad that we won't have to have those conversations this year.
I know, right?
And the next guy up here is number 21 is am I going to pronounce this wrong? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Thairo Estrada. That's what I'm going with.
Taro.
I'm so close. So
Yeah.
Thairo. I've got the Estrada. I don't need help with that. But anywho, he was the 6th ranked second baseman last year. And why, you ask? Well, this San Francisco Giant 26-year-old who will play this year at 27 had 14 dingers, 21 stolen bases, a 260 average, a 322 on base percentage. OPS was a little low, 722. But we're talking about a guy who is on a decent, not great team and just pump some numbers through. So if he's back this year as a second baseman, long-term could be looking up for him as a 27-year-old. We should see 5 years of MLB time from him. He's just going to be in a spot where he's going to be consistent. I don't think he's going to lose his job. He only really got it in 2021. He broke in as a Yankee in 2020, 19 and 20. He had a little bits of time. And then towards the end of 2021, got a job and held it all 2022. So yeah, that's my 21.
This next group is just so fascinating, and there's so much variability in this part of the list here. At number 20, Brendan Donovan in St. Louis is a guy that I love. Just love. Like, if I could put him on any team that I'm involved in or I'm a fan of, I would do it in a heartbeat. This is a pure ball player, and he's going to get it done in a lot of different ways. He was the 17th ranked guy last year with not a full season of at-bats either.
Mm-hmm.
This should be an opportunity this year for him to take more of those at-bats from a guy like Nolan Gorman. We'll see, though, right? That team is still very, very deep. Brendan Donovan is good, but also very expendable, right? This is a guy that could still be flipped before the season starts. There's still, a ton of depth in that outfield. Frankly, he could steal the outfield job from the other guys that I think everyone is assuming is going to win those jobs. Like, there's nobody in that outfield that is safe or ahead of Brendan Donovan as we sit here today, right? So you got to assume Tyler O'Neill has a probably the best chance to be a lock, but the other guys don't have enough of a historical track record to be ahead. So the best part about Brendan Donovan, he's a second baseman. He's going to steal some at-bats from Gorman. He's going to steal some at-bats in the outfield, and he's certainly going to come off the bench late in games and get some at-bats. So, there's going to be at-bats here. It's not a concern. That's about the only reason I don't have him a touch higher, to be honest, Robbie, because we just don't know 500 at-bats is a lock yet.
Absolutely.
I think 350 is, 400 probably, 500 not so much. So that's what we're waiting for there. A guy that stepped into 500 at-bats last year was Andres Jimenez in Cleveland, got the All-Star nod, deserved it. Very good baseball player. 5th ranked guy. I think it's a little high for what his upside is. I think the power is the issue here. We saw a little bit of a bump in power last year. The position's really weak as it sits here today, but there's some depth coming. So as a 5-year stretch, that power should keep him as a really safe guy, right, in the middle of the pack in terms of second baseman. So
yeah, sorry, just to clarify, Ty, he finished 2022 as the 5th ranked second baseman. On our dynasty rankings, he's 19th. Just because just so no one's confused, because the way you said it, it could have been interpreted that he's our 5th ranked guy. He's not. We have the power concerns, like you just said. So for us, he's 19, not 5. But he did finish at 5 last year, which is incredible. Also goes to show you that power can be worked around when you add in more counting stats and things like that within your fantasy leagues.
Yep. The next guy has 0 power concerns. Nick Madrigal here at 18. Robbie still believes in him. I think he's dying on the hill, which I fully support, and I've been there. And this is a guy that is gonna have a tough time finding some playing time this season. This is, Dansby coming to town. He gave the heartwarming speech about his granddad and being a Cubs guy and all this fun stuff. But he's the odd man out right now. And I said this earlier in the offseason, like I see Madrigal moving to center. I think that's the spot he's going to end up. It's not going to be this season. It's going to be next. So we might see a transition of at bats throughout this year where he fills the gap on the infield and then fills the gap in center field a little bit as well. So I think that's going to be what we see. And we'll just let that one play out. But I had Madrigal back at 30. Robbie has him at 12. He found his way here into 18. So Nolan Gorman is a guy that, for me, is maybe the most polarizing guy on this list. Has the potential of power and production to be number one, right? But lacks the hit tool to really find sustainability into consistency over 5 years, or even maybe a consistent full-time job. Upsides there, downsides there. Maybe the biggest boomer bust guy we've seen in a very long time. Dan Ugla, anyone? I think this is really.
Oh, wow. That's
right?
a really good comp.
Right?
Yes.
So, I mean, his forearms are probably half the size of Dan Ugla's, but that's I like the comp as well. Jorge Polanco, I think, is maybe one of the biggest bargains at the position. Former shortstop guy, shifted over with all the depth that Minnesota had at shortstop. I still like Jorge Polanco, and I feel like the 16th rank is what he finished at last year. It's where we have him on our list. We both have him right behind that, and that's for me, I think, a mistake on our part. But I do think he has the potential to be top 10 at the position, right? I think that's still there. Even as we sit here today, he's just 28, so he's certainly not past his prime. And we've got previously really strong seasons.
Well, Ty, hold on before you say those. Remember, PED popped Jorge Polanco. Just keep that in mind as you scroll back. I know for you, it's almost like a little bit of extra seasoning you like to put on those stats when you're like, they carry over. So what I'm saying here is Jorge Polanco for me is still a mirage because we need to know what the real Polanco is.
Right. But the PD pop was in what, 2020? Right? We saw 33 home runs in 2021. 16 was way down last year, battled a little bit of injuries, just 375 at bats. He was never really healthy last year. So, like, if there's a discount at second base with some upside, of all the guys on the list, it's Jorge Polanco.
Oh, okay. For upside?
Yeah, like, I mean, if you're talking discount with max upside.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Yep, I agree.
Like, it's for sure Polanco. So a guy that fit that mold last year, and I bought him everywhere, was Jeff McNeil. And I'm going to hand that to you inside the top 15 here.
Sure. Yeah. 31. He'll play this year. I think 31, turned 32. He finished last year at 8. Loaded Mets. It's going to be a good thing for him. But I think long term, he's going to be out with the Mets over the course of 5 years. So I've got him back a little bit for me. He's 19th. Ty's got him at 11th. So he finished for us at 15th. Nothing bad to say about McNeil. It's just how he's going to age out. And if he's not on the Mets, some of those stats are going to go down. 14, we've got Gavin Lux. Thank goodness we got Gavin Lux to become a major league player because it wasn't looking good. And when we see it with other prospects, it's sad. It looks now like he's going to come in and just be a good, solid MLB second baseman. Last year, he was 20th. Ranked. For us, he's at 14 over the next 5 years. And I think that's pretty reasonable. He's not going to be elite. He's not going to be a, trash can. He's going to be somewhere where you get some good years and some years you were hoping for a bit more. I see some serious upside with the next one here at 13, and that's Vaughn Grissom with Atlanta. Obviously, he's, somebody you can really be excited for at 20, playing this year at 22. He raked at A and double A and high A, and double A, and then got promoted to the show. One thing he did a lot in the minors that he didn't do last year, which he could introduce, is stealing bases. He only had 5 in the show last year. He had 20 plus in the minors and a good average hitter in a loaded lineup. Now it's going to be a little different. I think he was at the back of the lineup this year. He'll probably be the 9 hitter. That's my assumption, so that he can reset for the big boys. And if Albies is up at the top of that lineup, it could just be run city for Grissom. It's going to be really important for him to get on base. He's not going to have high RBI totals, but he will be able to be like 100 plus. He could be one of the rare cases of 100 plus runs hitting at the back of a lineup just because it's so darn good. Now, he could also move up that lineup, and we could start to see a little bit more mix between runs and RBIs, but we'll see. Number 12 is Gleyber Torres, who, Ty, correct me if I'm wrong, is a free agent right now.
No,
he is with the Yankees.
Yeah, I think he has 2 more years of control.
Okay. I don't know why I talked myself into that. Anyway, he was really good against Baltimore a couple years ago. It looks to me like Glaber's just the steady guy who people don't like in New York. So,
I mean, here's the thing, though. Like, he's had positive seasons in every year except for 21. Like, 21 was a down year, right? But he's been well above average every other year, and he's still just 26, right? Like, I saw a comp to the years of Robinson Cano pre-age 26, and Gleyber blows him out of the water. So that's the comparable that New York should have and should remember. You still have a really good player here. It's too early to start giving up on him.
all right. Now, somebody that a lot of dynasty guys have given up on, but I'm saying not yet. Not yet, everybody. That's Jonathan India with Cincinnati. Yes, the lineup sucks, and he needed some power behind him. He did not have a good 2022, but India overall playing this year, I believe at age 26, will improve drastically from where he finished last year, which was ranked 27th. I think he can easily be a top 10 cusp guy into the teens. We got to see a power stroke if he's going to get up into that top 5, which I don't think is going to happen, but that's okay. Jonathan India is a solid MLBer, and for dynasty owners right now, he's on the downturn. And this group actually is kind of interesting. You've got a McNeil who might be a bit of an easy buy, Torres who could be just depending on your league, and India who could be an easy buy now. Lux and Grissom, good luck. I think a lot of people are seeing the potential for Lux and Grissom to, be stars, but the other 3 I think could all be had in your dynasty leagues, and they're the 3 that I think could be just as successful over the next 5 years as the other 2.
Well, and India is a guy that, like, I flagged all over the place last year coming into the season. That downturn was obvious, right? It was expected. You should be prepared as an India owner. Now we're back into the time where you buy, right? Like, this is where you buy Jonathan India because he's going to bounce back. It's punch counter punch, and now we're ready to see it. I don't know if he's quite ready for this, but he's certainly in the conversation.
Hello, is it me you're looking for?
I mean, he has to be a member of Team Post Hype here. That lineup is going to continue to get better. They've made some good trades over the last couple of years to really, fix that minor league system. And, they're still a couple years away from seeing the full crop come to the major leagues, but like there's some real stars coming in that system. So, India's going to be the veteran. He's going to be the clubhouse leader. He's going to be the guy that hits 2 or 5 or, just there because he has the experience when all that talent comes. So for a 5-year stretch, I still like India. I think this is a very, very safe spot and very much like Polanco, a bargain. I don't think the upside's the same as it is for Polanco.
Yeah,
but it's not that far off. I think if I was to say consistency, India. If I was to stay upside at Polanco, that's the way I would leave that one. Inside our top 10 here, very much like Jeff McNeil last season, Tommy Edman was a guy that everybody felt was being overdrafted. Well, guess what? He wasn't. He was ranked 3rd at second base position. He was drafted exactly where he should have been. I know I got chirped in a couple spots for drafting him. He did everything he was supposed to do. Unfortunately, where I owned him, the rest of my team just blew up with Carlos Correa style injuries. And, it's one of those things that's part of fantasy baseball. Sometimes your seasons are just over very early. It's an unfortunate side effect, but it does happen. Edman's a guy I still like. He's going to pick up shortstop eligibility this year at some point if he doesn't have it going into the season.
Yeah,
So,
I'm sure he's just the shortstop now in Boston.
St. Louis, but yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking to Edman. I thought you said Story. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. Story, probably the same thing, but I've heard different rumors about Story sticking at second. And that's interesting because I never saw him as a defensive liability. But it does point to the fact that Boston kind of knew Bogarts was leaving, or they wanted Bogarts to leave, right?
Yeah.
So
writing was on the wall with that signing.
Yeah. And so it's definitely an interesting transition. They do have the young kid coming, Raphael, is a guy that's going to probably push for the show this year. He might not make it, but he's going to be close. If not, I would say there's an actual outside chance, if short of a Cesar Hernandez signing, like we could see Rafael in spring. It's possible, not likely, but possible. Story, I agree with you, is probably the shortstop, short of a signing at shortstop, which is nobody really left. Brandon Crawford maybe is still a little pissed off. Maybe he wants to go, but
Well,
there's
not anymore. He's still angry. Yeah, he's still angry, but he's like, I'll still like make $12 million this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and his hair wouldn't flow as well in Boston as it does in the wind in San Francisco. So there's that too. Brendan Rodgers, we talked about earlier, as a guy that, could use a change of scenery from a swagger perspective, but we saw some production out of Brendan Rodgers last year, right? And for a very weak position, like Brendan Rodgers is no longer a bust, right? He is now a fantasy asset. 266 last year. The OPS was still a little light at 733, but 13 home runs. We started to see some of what we wanted out of Brendan Rodgers. Now, he's still young enough. Like, he's still 26. It's not over in terms of what he can be. We still might not have a very, very high ceiling like we wanted, but there's still enough here to be somewhat excited as we look towards the numbers. His away splits last year were not good. 588 OPS. That's the big red flag. But if we look at the second half, he was slightly better in the second half from a contact perspective, a little less on the power side. So I'd really like to see a full season. That's what I'm looking for. And I think a change of scenery could be good here. I think just a second set of hitting coaches and instructors would really benefit a Brendan Rodgers, in my opinion.
Yeah, I certainly hope that he could, like, very much like Lux, right? Just turn out to be a quality producer. And if he's in Colorado, the numbers get bumped up. I mean, we both have him ranked inside our top 5. We will talk about this after we've recorded. There's an adjustment needed on that ranking there, because Brendan Lowe, who's in with Tampa Bay, is at 7 for us, and we both have him ranked 10th. So something happened with the math. Somebody got into our voting machines, Ty, and they've been hacked. And then I was going to say Jake Cronenworth is ranked higher by both of us. So I don't know if you want to make a quick adjustment before we finish this off. It looks like it only happened to a couple of the guys where the average ranking between yours and mine doesn't. It looks like there's an extra. Looks like you counted your 2022 for maybe a couple guys. Is that what may have happened here? We're not stopping the podcast. We're just pausing to ensure that our top 10 didn't accidentally have an error, which, I mean, maybe it's my fault. Let's be honest. It's not. But anyway, so we've got Brendan Rodgers at 8, Lowe is at 7, Cronenworth sitting at 6 right now. But I think when we do our little adjusted rankings here, it looks, Ty, like, yeah, you included I in some of those. So, which is your 2022 rank. So anyway, we're going to get that sorted in a moment. Ba-boom. And like magic, still don't know how
hold the phone. We're doing live edits here of the data.
Yeah.
So full average reconstruction here. Nothing.
And thanks to the power of editing, none of this will get cut. So anyway, let's quickly restack the top 10 here. Tommy Edmonds at 10. Brendan Lowe is now at 9. Trevor Story is at 8. Jazz Chisholm at 7. That's upsetting. Ketel Marte is at 6. So we can recap that. We've got a couple new names. So I'll quickly go on Jazz. I think Jazz could be an absolute category crusher for people out there. There's the side of him that people don't like, which Ty alluded to earlier. Could be clubhouse cancer. But there's also the whole eye poppy, he gets the job done. Let the boy do what he's got to do. And I think if he is unleashed in Miami this year, there could be some big numbers coming from Jazz. And he's one of the few guys that you can bank on for power and stolen bases if healthy. So he missed a lot of time last year. I don't think that's going to repeat this year. He's only going to play this year at 25. I love it. Do you got anything on Jazz and or Ketel Marte?
Not that I have said, I do think Kettle's bound for a little bit of a step forward. I think that lineup with a little more depth will help him. The kids are going to get a little bit better. Moreno's there. Like there's a lot of good that's happened in Arizona this offseason just from time passing. So I think that's going to help Kettle Marte. So I think he's a guy that we could bump ahead of these next couple of guys moving forward. That's the only thing I will add to that. Ahead of him, we talked about Brendan Rodgers already at 5. Altuve for me he still has to be unseated, right? He was the number 2 last year. He's still arguably maybe the best like 5 category guy, possibly, right? He is aging out. Like he is 33 now. The speed is less so than what it once was when he was the obvious number 1. So I think there's room for him to be moving back over the next couple of years. This is the last year for me, Robbie, that I think I'm going to be comfortable ranking him as high as I have. I have him at 2 still, but I think I'm going to slowly move him back or even quickly, depending on how his power holds with age. But
that's what I've been doing.
It's still hard to move him back, given just the lack of like eliteness around him in this top 10.
And that's one of the difficult parts of doing the 5-year ranking versus like a 2 or 3 year, or as some of the other guys do, like an every 3-month ranking. It's hard to think that in 4 years, Jose Altuve could even be in the conversation to be a top 5 guy. But the position has so much transition where guys are shortstops like Story who come over and then go back, or Marcus Semien who come over for 1 year, but now they are a second baseman. And my God, they are good at it. So to see what Altuve can just do consistently at second base, I've ranked him at 7 just because I do see a little bit of that regression, but I also see guys like, Brendan Rodgers and Chisholm and some other guys that we haven't mentioned yet being able to consistently beat him out in the coming years. And if Houston stays good, guys like Abreu continue to hit it well into their late 30s, there's no reason why Altuve couldn't continue to do it. That's why he's comfortably in our top 5. So number 3 is Jake Cronenworth, the 29-year-old San Diegan. Can do it all, and maybe he'll move around a little bit this year too. We'll have to see, but he is just consistent, and we've talked about it already. They're a loaded lineup. There's not a lot to say about it with Cronenworth. He's proven it. Yep. So we're giving him his due.
He's about as steady Eddie at the position as we've seen over the last few years. Like nothing is elite. Everything is above average. Like that just is what he is, right? Great to see a guy that kind of has that kind of similar profile, just elevated, comes into number 2. He's my number 1. Ozzy Albies is fought injury. So I'm ranking him 1. I actually agree with Robbie's number 1. I don't have an issue with it. But Ozzy Albies for me is still my pony that I'm going to bet on. He has the most upside. He has the most consistency. And he has the best lineup, in my opinion. So I think with all of that, I think he's still the guy. And it's really just comes down to the production based on roster construction, because Simeon's going to hit leadoff when he should never hit leadoff, but he likes to hit leadoff. Texas is going to let him hit leadoff probably. That hurts his production numbers ultimately. So he finished 1 last year. Robbie's got him at 1. He sits at 1 on our list. Nothing wrong with it. It is 1A, 1B in my opinion here. But I will still bet on Albies if I had the choice.
If both are playing the same number of games, I give it to Albies. I just don't think that's going to happen. I think Albies is still going to miss some time. I don't know if there's a conditioning issue with him, if he's got weak bones, if he doesn't drink enough milk. I don't know what it is, but he just seems to find a way to not be in the lineup. And whatever.
I mean, the injuries last year were like a foul ball off his ankle and getting hit by a 100-mile-an-hour fastball. Like these aren't things that were conditioning issues. These are issues that were just
well, that's why I'm saying I don't know exactly what it is, but he's missing time. And Marcus Semien, for us here at Dingers, he was one of the most hated guys who we said, when he was with Oakland, like sell him now. He's had a good first half in whatever year it was, 2018 when we first started the podcast. Cash out on those Semien chips. And now I'm ranking him years later as the number 1 guy at a different position. He's just proven it to me. He's a reliable hitter. And my God, he sucked in April last year and people were hounding him. But he was so good after that point. And, if you're a roto guy, you're not going to remember the bad times because you're only going to remember the end of the season. But if you're in head-to-head, you might have a little bit of a dislike for him for that inconsistent start. Well, we've talked about it before with power hitters like Edwin Encarnacion, start slow, finish strong. this is Marcus Simeon. You're going to have to look at the end of season for him and just kind of trust the process that he's going to get it done. And I really like the Texas lineup. I really like the Atlanta lineup. I really like the San Diego lineup. The Houston lineup, I would say, of those four is the weakest, and it's still strong with Altuve there. But I think Simeon's going to be able to get it done. Like you said, Ty, if he's batting leadoff, he's going to be hurting his RBIs, but he's also going to get a ton of at-bats and more opportunity than he would if he was batting further back. So I'm kind of calling that a wash. And I think consistently he can be a 90-90 guy the next 5 years.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure about 5 years, but I don't hate the downside to this because the upside is there. I think it's going to be there. I'm with you on that one. I mean, he's one of those guys, like you look at a guy like A-Rod who faded because he couldn't hit the fastball. Simeon feasts on the fastball, and it's going to be the last thing to go in his game. So I think it's, the way that Major League Baseball is with velocity right now, I think that's a big reason why Simeon's having the success that he is. So
that's a very good point. Everyone is being trained to throw heat. Yeah, that's smart. And he only had 26 dingers last year.
Well,
so
it's because
not even like he raked,
but he didn't hit any till like July.
Well, but yeah, that's my point though. He wasn't raking. Like he had 101 runs and 83 RBI, so he was like a 90-90 last year. Average it out.
It took him 2.5 months to stack all his bills. Right? He just had to fill some storage bin somewhere with like just that bed of money from.
He was trying to figure out where to put all those paychecks, all that
right.
green of his.
That's right.
But anyway,
so
that's second base.
Second base, like this is, we've talked about catchers like this for the last couple of years. Second base is the new catchers. Right now, they suck. There's a couple of real good stars in there. Try to hold on to them if you have them. Try to replace them if you don't. But, we're really looking for college bats right now. Justin Foscue is a guy. E-Guy is a guy, right? Like there's guys that are coming at second base. Try to find them. Yankees are going to end up with a second baseman out of their two shortstops. That's obvious. So
big magical bounce back. All right, Ty, you were talking about that. Wait, no,
yeah,
no.
Oh. I'm not there. But be ready for second base to improve over the next couple of years, and hold on for dear life until then. So great spot to leave it. It's been Tyler Robb here on